When you care about current affairs, it's on the old show.
Welcome to the O Show, Canada's current affairs show with strong opinions. I'm your host, Laura Babcock, and joining me, you can tell by the laughter already, is none other than Douglas Connors from the True North Beaver podcast. Douglas was just saying that I throw so much out there that he feels like taking notes. And I said, no, just interrupt me and tell me to say it again, because I've got more to say this week than I can remember in a while, because we're watching the erosion of our rights. We're watching threats to our sovereignty. Even though I think Carney had a spectacular White House meeting, and we'll get into that, there's just so much bullshit going on. And I know that the chiefs in Alberta got together and sent a strong message, and you're all fired up about that. So this is an O Show full of fire and also some smoke. Black smoke, white smoke, we'll have to see as we go. But before, for our audio listeners, he was just doing this awesome smoke dance vibe. I love it, man. I feel like you were clubbing when I was clubbing, because that's one of my moves.
I was a big fan of Bananarama.
Okay, I can see it. Yeah. Summer. Yeah, I love that song. Do you wear the latex? Remember she got painted, that latex on her?
know.
Oh my God.
I saw that, and it's like half of me was like sitting there, like this is a little galing, my legs, my little wings. So half of me was sitting there going like this, oh my God, she is so fierce. And the other half of me is going, God, I want to be her.
And I was thinking to myself, honestly, she looks hot, but also how actually hot would you have to be painted in latex? Anyway, that was what
must have been unbearable that day.
I know. That's what made the news back in.
She worked hard for her money.
Yes. See, we better treat her right. She's awesome. Okay. Pop culture.
You picked up on it.
There you go. Enough pop culture references until our next pop culture reference. But listen, my friend, before we get started, I just want to thank all of our subscribers out there. The O Show, let's get to 5,000 subs. Everyone's sharing it everywhere. The clips are going bananas. If you miss Bruce Fanjoy, he came back on the pod this week to do a quick chat with me to let me know what's up now that he's won in Carleton, and also had some advice for the people who are a little concerned about Pierre Poilievre's move to Alberta to run in a by-election. So check that out. And the Scandal Panel will be here for a special Thursday night show next week, right after the budget is announced in Ontario, because, Ontario is the big economy in this country. Alberta's important, so is Quebec and a bunch of other places, but we got to hear what's going on with Ontario. And from what I can tell you, from what Ford's been saying lately, it ain't good. I'm very pissed off at the Premier. I've been holding my fire because we've had bigger fish to fry with the federal election and the Trump shit, but okay, Ford, let's go. All right, So where do you want to start, Douglas? Do you want to start with the threats of Alberta separation that Danielle Smith just said, that the bigger threat to Canada is not Trump, it's the Liberal government? And what do you
Sorry.
I roll noted.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
For people who are just on the podcast, there was a epic eye roll. It
was almost at the level of my 14-year-old daughter's eye rolls. Hers can stop traffic. So you went on a fierce rant this week on social about Danielle Smith, and you watched the presentation made by the chiefs in Alberta, the Indigenous people, the treaty issue. I mean, all of it. Do you want to dive into that? Because you seemed fired up this week.
Listen, one of the things, because, on our show, we like to do, we laugh, we joke, we talk all that kind of stuff, but we like to do the political literacy bit. We like to do the civics bit, right? And one of the things that particularly irritates me, there are two things that irritates me. One is anybody that gets in the way of any citizen's right to cast a fully informed vote.
Yeah.
So when you don't allow press on your tour, when you do not show up at debate, when you actively support disinformation operations, that type of stuff, when you have a manual to blow up committees so that they don't work, all that type of stuff, and you make us pay for that, that pisses me off. Okay. Number two, the second one is this kind of stuff. Yeah. Politicians, legislators, law legislators who lie to Canadians about what the law or the Constitution does allow or does not allow.
Yeah.
Because that pisses me. I personally believe there should be a law saying that it is illegal for a legislator to lie to the people about what the law allows or does not. You got Danielle Smith, looking at you in the eye, right into the camera, does a live stream with nobody there, and then lets 24 hours go about before she takes questions. So that could all sit, her line can sit in your mind and just sit there and stew with no opposition anywhere. Uninterrupted. 18 minutes direct at you and telling you that she will not accept any question that violates the treaties on separation. There cannot be a question on separation in Alberta that does not violate the treaties. So she's telling the other half of Alberta, well, I don't support this personally. For those of you who do, here's the manual on how exactly to make it happen, and I'm going to lower the threshold for you, and then, right? But I would never. She's holding two discourses to two groups of Alberta at the same time, and she's selling them both a line of BS. She's selling to one group the line that this separation thing is possible, and she's selling to the other group of people, I am never going to let it have a question. And then she's going to take everything that comes from Ottawa, filter it through that lens. Every time there's something, there's going to be an email that goes out. Oh my God, look at the latest hostile action from Ottawa.
You said to me off the top of the show, how am I doing? And I'm like, I'm doing well on some levels. Thank you, Mark Carney and Washington. That was a nice 24 hours. But on the level of watching Ford and what he's doing in Ontario, which we will get to, which is pretty freaking scary in terms of, becoming all out autocratic with some stuff, watching Danielle Smith stoke these separation fears, laced in bullshit and mired in scandal. The MAGA threat is still real in Canada. Provincially, these fucking premiers, right, are causing Canada a lot of unnecessary and unfair and feels like MAGA-induced bullshit.
Yeah.
Had to get that out.
I'm glad you did. We've been saying it on the show for about 2 years now.
No.
Hashtag the premiers are the problem.
Right.
And like today, this morning show, we were doing that exactly. We're talking about like premiers specifically. We're talking about two grandstanders. We got Doug Ford and we got Danielle Smith. Two grinders who've got their nose to the grindstone are just doing the work. We got Wap Canoe and Susan Holt like this, and one who's making an exit, Raj Pillai, who announced that he's stepping down in Yukon. So we're always looking at the premiers here.
Sometimes when we assume that the guardrails, like the Constitution, are going to protect us, we fall prey to what we've seen happen in the US, which is an air war of such constant disinformation and so many resources like American-owned newspapers in this country pushing this constant narrative that in fact separation is a possibility, that in fact there's an injustice done to Albertans, and the only fair patriotic thing to do is to fight back and split away. We are being attacked as a country in a trade war and in a misinformation war. MAGA is not letting up. We had a good moment in the White House the other day. Carney showed that he can handle the moment, but MAGA is not letting up. And these premiers are working against our national interests in some cases. And if we don't understand the threat is ongoing and growing, we are in big trouble. So to say it's not possible to separate, I don't know that it is possible within the current structures, but you destroy those structures, you destroy faith in the Supreme Court or the biggest court of the land, you destroy confidence in government, you destroy confidence in treaties, you say that all of it is just made up and none of it exists, and you got an American president still talking about us having a fake border. I'm just pushing back, Douglas.
No.
Because I can't indulge in talking in a normal way, in a normal construct, about things that we have seen go horribly abnormal to the democracy to our south. Right?
Exactly. And you are exactly right. So when I'm saying this, right, is that's where the discussion should stop.
Right.
We're going to do this. There's treaty. There's the Constitution. Right. There's so much precedent. That is not happening. We also have the Clarity Act. It is not happening. But regardless, no, regardless, that's it. Now, of course, as you say, this is a movement for which no does not mean no. Try harder, try another way, try again. Keep trying until people get tired or exhausted and leave the public space. The whole thing, right? That's why this movement is relentless. Right? This is a strategy.
Right, but the insidious thing is that the rules that organize Canada,
Yes.
that keep us 150 years plus
Yes.
as this wonderful country,
They're in danger.
they are under assault.
Yes.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
that's the point I'm making, is that
Yes.
I don't want us to be in a position in 5 years where we're like, didn't see that coming, thought that our courts and our media and everything would be bulwarks against this MAGA fascist uprising.
Mhm.
It won't be. We have to
No.
fight every single fucking day.
Exactly. And that's why on our shows, often when we have guests that have that influence, we're always asking the questions, what do you have in your platform?
Right.
Like this, to help arm the citizens
Yeah.
with the knowledge. Like this, what are we doing in civics classes? Are we boosting that? Are we making that not just 1 year or 1 unit? Are we keeping that several years all the way through? What are we doing in terms of public disinformation information? What are we doing in terms of making it having subtypes of consequences for certain types of disinformation?
I mean, how does fascism rise? They rise by taking away trust in the institutions, right? So every time that a politician lies about the ability to have an easy separation, every time that a politician takes takes rights away under some exceptional bullshit legislation like Ford's trying to do in Ontario, where as of today, municipalities can't block developments. It's now going to be up to the provincial government, literally stripping municipalities of their fucking point. So that is his Greenbelt buddies can get something else that they couldn't get when we stopped the Greenbelt. So whenever I see corruption or lying or taking away the structures that govern, if you will, our version of checks and balances in our parliamentary system, it's deeply alarming. I love that Carney said, we got to fund a robust Canadian media. He knows what's going on, obviously. Every time that Canada shows that we have allies and that we've got strength and that we fight for our values and that we're resolute, it helps. But I'm just very, very aware that we watch the most free country in the world collapse in 10 years of disinformation.
One thing we have going for us, but it's still something that, like you said, shouldn't rest on it, is that our Supreme Court is way different than the one in the United States. Our Supreme Court is really more the concept that our justices are loyal first and only to the law.
Yes, that's true. They're not elected.
And not Republican.
But you got Ford.
But you got Ford. Exactly. That's what
Ford
I'm saying.
in Ontario is trying to get the judges elected like the U.S. Why?
Exactly. Why? Because when a judge has a constituency rather than a constitution to be loyal to, the law changes. If you don't know how your country works, anyone can pull the wool over your eyes.
Get the civics education in early. Get in legislation that prevents disinformation. Carney's working on the deep fake AI stuff and on making sure there's Canadian journalism is supported. Everyone support your local journalist and your independent journalists, right?
Exactly.
Like this,
change the subsidy thing so that if it's not wholly owned Canadian media, no subsidy can go to it.
And
increase
all of
the
that
subsidy to Canadians who subscribe.
And all of that is excellent. These are all small and important steps in essentially putting sandbags around our country from the waves that are coming, right? And I appreciate all of it. I also live, maybe more than most, in the war that's happening, the air war, and I dedicate a certain amount of time to it every day because, God damn it, I'm not going to let my country just be taken. Right? I'm going to fight back, and a lot of people are doing that in their own ways that they can do it. And let's talk, about some wins, because wins are equally important. So getting Mark Carney in the job, which a lot of us who aren't even partisan put a lot of effort into, was for a reason, because he's competent. Mark Carney is competent, and we've seen that in spades since he got into the gig. And he communicates better than any Canadian politician I've seen in terms of both volume and quality. And he is also not creepy, whereas Poilievre was creepy. And we just found out that it really was women who pushed Carney over the line, because Poilievre just had a creep factor with women. We talked about it, the ick factor here on the program. That was a real thing. So that's a win. Also,
yes.
that Bruce Vanjoy got support from across the country in terms of money. People are supporting this guy they
Yep.
don't know with money to
Yep.
stop Poilievre. So then what does pathetic Poilievre do? Decide that after a week of licking his wounds, he's going to get somebody who fought hard for their own seat to
Yep.
give it to him. So what? So we can listen to his campaign propaganda, which, because we know Andrew Scheer, which is like ridiculous, is going to suck in Parliament.
Nothing says change like bringing Andrew Scheer back, eh?
Oh God. I mean, I'm not going to engage in some of the smears I've heard of Scheer, other than it's sheer stupidity for the Conservative Party to think that Andrew Scheer is going to do well. And I think it's deliberate. I think they picked
Yeah.
who's,
They picked the most lackluster and safe person because here's the thing, right? It's going to be a couple of months before he's in the chair.
Right.
Well, let's say Mark Carney is doing well, and let's say that the Liberals' numbers stay constant and the Conservative numbers start to take a dip by the time he gets to his seat sometime in September. And Conservatives have had between now and in September to see somebody who's not Andrew Scheer doing the job. Maybe that might give them ideas.
So
we can't let them having ideas now, can we?
Well, and I'm going to say something that people will probably not want.
We can't let them be thinking freely.
Of course not.
Can we?
They weren't even allowed to be in the debates. This is a MAGA thing. MAGA is not a free thing. So here's my concern about Poilievre as I'm listening to you. It'll probably piss people off, but who cares? By putting Scheer in, which is like a dud, right, into the job, the Conservative roiling rage at Carney and at all things Liberal is going to need a focal point, and it won't be Scheer. So that gives Poilievre a platform while he is campaigning in his rural Alberta riding. It gives him a platform to continue to be the voice of the movement. And eventually, when he gets back in, if he does, although Bruce Vanjoy pointed out that all by-elections start at zero, right? It comes down to effort, and winning, as he said, is a process. So like everyone become strong and work hard and get a good team. Who knows what can happen? But they are positioning Poilievre to continue to be this charismatic, almost martyr now. And when I saw this video posted by some right-wing dude about, the big Poilievre comeback, they are positioning him in a very MAGA strategy to be this grievanced hero. And that shit scares me more than him winning, because that turns him into the kind of little crazy cult leader image that I saw with Trump 10 years ago. I mean, Canadians, don't underestimate this shit. It's a playbook that we're watching.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. It's a playbook. Now, his road is going to be a little more complicated. But yes, first of all, let's talk about Mr. Carney, because when you talked about the creepy factor with Pierre Poilievre, meanwhile, side by side, we have Mark Carney, who, after winning, has got a Down with Webster hoodie like this and is like dad rocking.
Hitting the beats.
Like that's but dad rocking, but he's knowing the words. Like this, he's got the silly sign. Like he didn't just like, as he said with the interview, he didn't like just find this out, right? He's down with it. There are pictures of him like this outside of a baker's suit, sort of like mock turtle like this on the laptop like this, taking some time to pet the kitty. There's a clip going around during the debates where some guy's coming around to help people with their mic checks. And Pierre Poilievre is just writing, does my check, doesn't even look at them. And the other three are having a conversation. Mark Carney, like this, they're even having a laugh. There was a press conference earlier this week where Mark Carney had to go. People were still asking questions. Mark Carney was going around like, well, hey, come on. I think we have to respect the president of the press gallery here. There's another picture after that he puts with thank you to all the people that made the trip. Like this, Mark Carney was for a long time. The Conservatives keep on going like the private sector, and the NDP too. He's the private sector. He's the corporate guy. He was a public servant in the Department of Finance. Then on the board of the of Governors of Canada before being the governor, and then governor of the Bank of England, and then the UN envoy on finance and climate change. I mean, he's done a lot of work in the private sector, but he's also has a distinguished career as a public servant. And when you have a public servant as a prime minister, the way he treats the help the staff, it changes. So all of a sudden, what we got, Prime Minister gets down with Webster, treats the staff like it's decent, even though we all know he's rich and
Yes.
super accomplished.
Yeah.
Uh, um, can joke around, has a self-effacing sense of humor. We've got a real person
Yes.
versus a guy that keeps on trying different skins.
Well
The
said.
next Poilievre we're going to see is not, I don't know, if it is the real and authentic Pierre Poilievre, how would we know? Because it's been 20 years of who do you want me to be today? But at the core, there has been no evolution. And right now he produces this little video and says, like this, after 20 years, I can learn and I can change. Well, Sonny, I'm sorry, dear, but you had your chance, you blew it. But if you want another chance, I'm only going to believe it when it lasts. And given that you got 20 years of track record, 6 months is just not going to be enough, and it's not going to do it.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I mean, if this is, you've turned over a new leaf and this is going to be a new person, call me in 10 and 15 years. But 6 months after your 20-year track record, no, it's not enough. I'm not going to buy it.
I don't know if you've seen the AI, it's TikTok AI of Mark Carney's career, just as you described, but under a minute, where he kind of evolves in these different suits, and it goes from when he was a hockey player as a teenager. It's very powerful, but it makes the point you're making, is he's got a consistent public record of his achievements and of who he is as a person. And that authenticity and that competency is so much more powerful to people who are paying attention than whatever auspices or whatever fabrications or whatever, costume changes that Poilievre does to try to relate and be popular. We hired a real person as our prime minister. And when we got to see Carney go down to the White House and literally do circles around Trump that Trump didn't even know was happening, but many people have looked at. Carney was masterful when he met with Trump because he used a frame of reference that Trump could relate to and understand in real estate. He gave examples that Trump could feel and touch and go, okay, yeah, I agree with that. And then he let him know that Canada is not for sale. And then he followed it up by saying to Trump, but I want to pay you a compliment about how you have revitalized NATO and global security, which for all of us watching is like, yeah, revitalized, meaning we all have to invest in it now to protect ourselves from you. But Trump did not understand it because he got a compliment sandwich out of Carney and he didn't see it coming. And then later when Trump tried to reposition it and say, well, never say never, Carney looked at the cameras and said, never, 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 right? So America.
And then came back later.
Yeah.
Because Trump mentioned it two other times that Carney did not intervene. And then when it came to intervene on the whole, we don't need anything from Canada. Well, basically, like, I'm sitting right next to you, Canada, and I'm telling you how you have no worth for me whatsoever, right? It's basically what is going on. And it's like, excuse me, but we're your biggest client, by the way. But before that, number one, no, the Canada thing is not going to happen. So on that day, in that moment, because then the next question went to Trump, and then he answered it, and he abruptly ended it. Well, I say abruptly, it was already extended. So, Trump was obviously feeling good because those things usually last a couple of seconds or a few minutes. With Trump, he makes him a little bit of a show. But this one, you think maybe 15 minutes. We're at 34 before he decided, maybe this isn't going so well for you right now. I'm going to just cut this right off like this. But on that one, before he said, oh, by the way, like this, we're your biggest clients. But before that, just with all due respect, that's never going to happen. So the last word on 51st State, that people heard was Carney's. And by waiting to that last moment to do it. And when you're talking about the sandwich, the one thing, because we're talking this as a masterclass in diplomacy.
That's right.
Right? When he's coming and he says, the first thing that's good, and then he puts the criticism in there, and then pivots like this. But you revitalized, but as the things, like you're talking about as defense, and you revitalized it because Trump, it's the last thing he hears. If you put the criticism between something nice, you start with a little bit of flattery or mirroring, mimicking, not obsequious or oleaginous, like
it was amazing,
like Pence, like this, but a fact that can be interpreted whatever, like this. Put the critique and then end with another thing that you either reflecting or something. Trump grabs on. That gives Trump the permission structure to hear the critique, but avoid it.
Right.
Just latch onto the last thing and run with that.
And feel good.
Like this.
Right?
And feel good.
Yeah.
Like this. So but it also creates this, because it's all about safe face. So if you want to deliver criticism to Donald Trump, You put it between two things. You don't just end on the criticism, because then that's what he has to answer to. You finish it off with something nice so that he can take that baton and run with it.
And
But the
I've been
criticism still lands.
I've been training executives in leadership communication for a long time, for decades, because there is an art form to understanding your audience and what they need. So when you have to share information with them, facts, sometimes constructive criticism, how do you position it in a way that is most, going to be received as intended by the person in front of you? And Carney went in there understanding who Trump is, understanding that Trump has to be validated. I found it very sad, actually, when they said, what is the only concession you want from Canada? And Trump said friendship. That was, I think, a mirror into just how much as a person he is insecure and lonely. That was very telling. But Carney went in there with the kind of, he was resolute, he was focused, he waited his moments, he was respectful, he let the showman be the showman and steal the show. And in some people conflated, well, he only had 3 minutes out of 30 or whatever. And I said,
Good.
How much airtime you get during a debate is a measure of dominance. In a negotiation, in a high value comm like that, it's actually the wise person who listens for the moment and takes the moment. And like I said, I train in this stuff, and Carney is masterful. People might get tired of me saying that, but truly, he is very, very good at this. And I'm going to use his examples in my training now. But he said,
for a parallel on that one,
yeah,
Dame Judi Dench won a Best Supporting Actress for Shakespeare in Love for 7 minutes of screen time. Just saying.
That's
when
a
you
great
come
parallel.
in, it's what you do.
Thank you for the pop culture reference. We got another one in. Amidst our talk of fascism and politics and policy and and structures of our democracy. So he was a rock star. Mark Carney was a rock star in Washington, so much so. Oh, this would have hurt Poilievre, I'm telling you. Poor pathetic Pierre out there, when Trump put out a rock star video of Carney's visit, the likes of which I've not seen him do with anybody else. It was like, he's arriving. Here's the limo. He's in the White House. He's walking out the White House. And then Carney could have just leveraged that all damn day. But you know what Carney did? His own rock star video, including that moment where he was on the balcony of the Canadian Embassy and he looked typecast for the American president with the building behind him. I mean, it was the biggest show of TV power to Trump that Carney could have thought of. And I thought it was absolutely freaking brilliant. So I just want to give a toast to Carney's team. That shit was amazing. And Carney personally for giving them the content that they needed to pull that off. Amazing.
Yeah. When I saw that too, it was the same thing. And when you put them together, right? Donald Trump's is very cinematic.
Yes.
Right? It's like a movie trailer almost, right? Like this.
Yeah.
Now it's like, and here's the thing too, right? You got to remember, right? And I've said this on the show to you before. Donald Trump loves celebrity.
Absolutely.
In this particular realm, Mark Carney is the celebrity when it comes to banking. It's not like Donald Trump loves himself some bankers. Bankers don't love him, but he loves himself some bankers like this. So,
the fact that Carney said before he went to the BBC, he said, "I'm not a tourist. I've been to the White House. I've been to Florida." In other words, you ain't going to impress me with shit. When one of our producers heard that, he's like, he's not a tourist. What a thing to say, right? Like, the way this level set. I'm a boss. I'm coming for a serious meeting, or I'm not coming. And then you see Trump, like pretending Trump's on this whole "I should have been a movie producer" thing now with Alcatraz and all this other shit he's saying. The tariffs on movies. Like Trump is thinking himself a director now. When Trump did that little movie of Carney, I'm like, how is Poilievre getting out of bed?
I know, this is so good. So, but the thing is that Trump really wants to be liked, and he really wants to be liked by old money, right? It's a bit like Evita.
Of course.
She wanted to be liked by the middle classes. He wants to be liked by old money because he's vulgar new money.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Wants to be accepted. Gray-haired, banker, really respected all around the world. That's a guy he wants in the frame.
Absolutely.
With him. Right? Mark Carney is such a great guy, such a good like this, and this thing. I mean, this movie, like you said, this movie trailer. So yeah, like this. Now, Pierre, of course, is going to run with that and say, "Well, see, we told you about Trump wanted Carney all along."
He made the mad, mercurial, miserable man like full teeth smile.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it by saying, "Oh, here's an invitation," like Keir Starmer did to, the king. Like he wasn't obsequious.
Exactly.
but he played him beautifully. And if you really want to see the whole thing deconstructed, Lawrence O'Donnell has like 20 minutes on it,
Oh.
which I shared, which is just fabulous. But you and I are both column geeks, right? So we
Right.
got every nuance, every word, every
Yep.
structure, everything. Like, so it was really good. And I have to say that we have to look for wins in these moments.
Yes.
Because when we see Ford basically in trouble again for the Greenbelt scandal and all the secret meetings that we just found out about, and we see him trying to change the laws in Ontario to allow his guys to do whatever the hell they want with the province, right? When we see him mishandling the measles situation,
Yep.
we see what seems to be growing autocracy with the Ford government in Ontario.
Yep.
We know that he loves Trump, and we see how Trump is managing to dissemble all
Yes.
the structures around the democracy in the US. It's damn scary. So
Yep.
we have to invest in fighting back against these narratives, fighting back against MAGA where we see it, fighting back against any incursions into our democratic freedoms and rule of law and structures.
Yeah.
We have to look for the wins. Carney is a win. Bruce Fanjoy is a win.
Yes.
The chiefs coming out, the Indigenous chiefs coming out in Alberta so forcefully is a win.
Running back to Alberta is a win.
Yeah, we have to literally amplify and promote and support these wins, these people who are fighting for our democracy in all kinds of different ways. And I got to tell you, I've been asked 1,000 times if I'm on the Liberal payroll. I'm not. I'm doing it because my country needs me to, and I have a skill set. And I think every one of us out there, whether there's protests apparently that are going to be happening in Alberta this weekend. I don't know if they're like hands-off protests like in the US, hands-off Alberta. I don't know how they're going to position it. But, go out there with your feet and a placard. Take a picture of that and put it on social. There was a guy who put an awesome placard up during the race in Toronto this past weekend.
Yes.
That said, if you lose this race, don't worry. Just go to Alberta and run again, right? It was a perfect Poilievre thing.
Yeah.
But it went viral. Like, all of us can use our voices, Douglas, whether we're podcasters or we're PR people or we've got social or we've got our feet and our friends. We have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, there's a show I listen to called The Daily Beans, and they talk about microdosing on hope.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
So if I'm microdosing hope here,
right.
It's like, the one thing we've been telling our listeners on our show for the longest time with Pierre is like, give it time. Time is not Pierre's friend. Okay? Time has some work to do here. Yes, he ran all the way to the safe seat. He's locking it up. There's a reason he's locking it up. Time. Right now, he's run to Alberta. All throughout the campaign, he has done the best he could to avoid making a full-throated denunciation or support of Danielle Smith. Now he's going right into her backyard as she is raising the volume on this separatism thing. He is going to be asked this question again and again and again and again. Response, lack of response, whatnot. That's it. He's got a long time to go.
Yeah.
Okay, before that election, we're not being able to give a response. If he's not able to give us full-throated response, as the people that riding want, I have a feeling that there's probably going to be a Wild Rose Independent Party candidate running in that riding. Who knows? Maybe Bernie would like to take a shot. I mean, he already said that the party is morally and intellectually corrupt. And well, who's more morally and intellectually corrupt than Pierre Poilievre? So having a chance to take some haymakers and put the cameras on them, because that's what that whole PPC thing is. I would not be surprised if Bernie decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to go take a run. There's going to be a couple of people that are going to want to make his life miserable. There's also the fact that the guy who won it with 81.8%. So if Pierre only wins it with 70, or pray tell 60-something with a much lower voter turnout, because, it's a shoe-in anyway, and he's going to have a little trouble explaining those numbers. Now, the party also said that it's going to allow the Reform Act. A lot of people want to read into that. They always vote on it. That in and on itself is not a thing, but it is there. Now, he's got to win that by-election. He's got to take that seat. A lot of people really don't like Jenny Byrne.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are making his condition of staying that Jenny Byrne goes. But if Pierre Poilievre gets to stay and gets a do-over and Jenny Byrne has to go for the exact same result, well, that's going to be a messy divorce now, isn't it?
Well, there's so much messy. So let's just talk in our final minutes here. Let's talk.
I got to mention one more little thing.
Go ahead.
One more little thing. Then that leadership review
yes.
that every Conservative Party leader must have when they lose, that's not before the spring. That's plenty of time for plenty of people to have plenty of other ideas and plenty of time for Mark Carney again, if he is doing a really, really good job, to have a big dip and spread in the polls. And perhaps next spring, Pierre won't look as good as a prospect for the Conservative Party. So Mark Carney doesn't need to bring 3 or 4 people over right now to get a majority and whatnot like this. It would be nice if he had it now, but we've got all the way until the spring, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for plenty of maybe some Quebec Conservative MPs who are really not happy that Pierre's staying anyway, to maybe be enticed to come to the other side and have some real power.
Well, what's interesting to me is that I thought I see how you finished that one off, my friend.
Just saying.
The people who are listening to this
Might dose on hope.
if you're listening to it on Spotify, do pop over to the YouTubes to check out Douglas's fabulous performance art. So listen, one of the things I loved from my conversation with Bruce Fanjoy, the guy who beat Pierre Poilievre, a 20-year incumbent in his home riding, the guy who was going to be prime minister, Poilievre had it locked in. You couldn't get more powerful than that on a local level, and Bruce Fanjoy took him out. He said, winning is a process, and he said he went out on days when it was blizzardy, because one, he's from Ottawa, and that's what we do, but also because, he didn't want to be in a position where he was saying to himself, I wish I'd had more time.
Yep.
So he used every minute to his advantage.
He really did.
He really did. And so there's time in this by-election up there in Alberta. The UPC are kind of pissed at Poilievre. They might not like it. The people who voted for Damien and worked hard might not love that Damien stepped aside for Poilievre. You got Nenshi rising in Alberta. And as Mark Cripps said on the last Scandal panel, they're going to have an Alberta election to try to cut off Nenshi's momentum. And then you've got Carney overperforming as the Liberal leader. And if there is a fear of Canadian sovereignty at risk in Alberta, what's to say a Liberal candidate can't flip that riding? So, I mean, this is not a sewn up, locked up deal. Poilievre looks pathetic. He looked
right now.
pathetic. It took him almost a week to even call Bruce Fanjoy. He was suddenly quiet on all the socials. And then he comes out with this little walking video with his wife where they're like, oh, I've learned my lessons. You know what?
Before he thanks anybody in Carleton, which proves you did not learn your lesson.
Not only that, but we had to watch this fucking high-priced bullshit car video where they're zipping around a track in a new American vet. And now they're like walking through the fields going, oh, shut up already. Like, we know you're fake. We know exactly what you stand for, what your record of voting has stood for. And if the people in that riding are going to be like rolled over to vote for you when you're never going to be there, you don't care. Like, we know this shit. So, I mean, maybe they're just going to say, hey, it's Pierre all the way. But there's other forces at play in Alberta politics. And from everything that I'm hearing, I'm seeing people who are obviously, let's join the US. To your point, can they really? But there's a lot of movement and a lot of momentum on that because it's a paid campaign. Let's not fool ourselves here.
This is not grassroots.
this is coming from the US folks, right? Like the trucker convoy. But also we saw Canadians in massive numbers say, hands off Canada. Like, yes, Alberta's been pissed off since the 70s. We get it. I love Alberta. I've been there many, many times. They got their issues with their oil. I understand. Carney's got work to do with Alberta, like he's got work to do with Quebec, like he's got work to do with the East Coast when they get upset about something. That's part of being part of this confederation. It's a tough gig, and Carney's got to do it. But I don't know that even though an American-owned paper put out a headline today that, more than 50% of Albertans are upset about Alberta or whatever, that doesn't translate into a vote to try to leave Canada. And so I don't take it lightly. I take it seriously. But I'm also, as I said in my op-ed, I'm not afraid of Alberta separatists. I don't think they have the argument to leave Canada, even if they could figure out a way to destroy all of our systems and structures and treaties and rules to be able to do it. I don't think that they have the argument for Canadians who are watching a Canadian Prime Minister who's from Northwest Territories, lived in Edmonton, and is doing so far a pretty damn good job. If Carney is able to turn the economy around, if he's able to create multilateral trade, if he's able to figure out how to make it a true energy superpower, I don't see them having the argument in Alberta, but it will be a lot of tension and a lot of MAGA garbage and a lot of paid influence coming into this country. And we're going to have to speak up loudly, Canada, to say, not only do we want Alberta to stay in the country because it's Canada and all of us are important and valuable, But because this shit is American that's coming in, this MAGA campaign for Alberta, some of it might be grassroots, a whole hell of a lot of it is organized, paid for disinformation campaigns and influence and pressure. We got to see it to fight it.
Yep.
Last thoughts?
Last thoughts. I just want to let Canadians know that Mark Carney's promised a lot, and he wants to do a lot.
Yes.
What he promised is probably would require 2 mandates.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to realize, right, when you're transforming something, probably the first 2 years of that is going to be negotiations, consultations, setting up the structures, getting the permissions, passing the laws, all that kind of stuff to get the money out the door. Right now, we've got a minority. Usually, like this, the last minority we had, and the ones we had with Stephen Harper were a little weird that they lasted longer. Usually they last 1.5 to 2 years. The Bloc Québécois is working on the presumption that up until the midterms, that Trump will want a deal for the midterms so that he can campaign on it. And that's where it's going to end. So there will be stuff done, but it's not going to be, oh, well, how many houses did you build in the last 2? Oh, well, you didn't build that many, did you? There are sometimes that it's going to take to get off the ground, right? So he needs 8. We've given them the runway for 2 with a minority. We did well, but we didn't go all the way. Right. The reason Pierre's running again is because the Liberals didn't get a majority. If the Liberals had got a majority, Pierre would be gone.
Well, here's the thing. If they're making him into this whole, like I saw some comment on Threads that the election was rigged, they're using American bullshit.
Oh yeah.
So they're going to change that story to make it look like Pierre's always been the reigning champion of whatever. Here's the thing with Carney, though. I'm not going to.
But we need to have some patience, right?
Yeah.
We've only given him a 2-year runway with the minority, so it made it harder.
I think he'll have a lot longer than that because he's
eventually, yes,
he's a high level performer, and a high level performer tends to create their own destiny. And I think but he made a big promise, and I said this to him in a post that went and got hundreds of thousands of views. I said one of the reasons I voted for him was he talked about that housing promise. He talked about actual housing being built. He brought Sean Fraser back in, gave me hope for people who desperately need housing in this country that I care deeply about. So I'm going to keep my feet on the fire about that one. You can't be a guy who comes up and says, I'm eminently competent, I'm eminently ambitious, I'm asking all of you to roll your sleeves up and work hard with me so we can create a superpower and Canada can lead the world. That is the value proposition he sold us. That is the one that I personally bought, and I think he can do it. And yes, he's going to have to make the way for himself, but so far so good. So I'm not going to give him the low expectations. What do they call that? I'm not going to think less of his capacity to meet his own promises. I'm going to want him as a high performance person to feel all the pressure and all the fuel that he needs to get these things done.
And remember, when you're talking about the housing promise, right? Like this, when you're talking about that this guy has a plan and has a vision, he's not only promising houses, but when he's done, there will be a whole prefab modular housing industry built in Canada to serve the world.
Which is amazing.
Houses and a new industry.
Yeah.
I guess, and not selling any federal land for a green belt to go national to do it, but leasing it. Like the Conservatives want to do. Like, come on. And then funding the education for the tradespeople that we're going to need to build. Like,
he's smart. He's smart.
All the pieces fit together.
That's right.
You have a real person who actually thinks beyond slogans, thinks when he talks to you, he gives you the how. And when we're talking about those 2 videos, right? Trump's was cinematic. His was almost like a report back to us.
True.
He reports back to us.
It's true. It's true. Because he's an A student running through the door going, look at my report card. Look what I did today at school, right? He knows what he's doing, and he knows that he wants to share it. The people who don't report back, who rely on slogans, are the ones who don't know what the fuck they're doing, are the ones who have to hide behind bullshit because they don't have the actual skills to pay the bills. They don't have the receipts of their work. Trust me, when you know someone who is an A+ student, they're all about showing you their tests and their report cards because they're proud of it, because it's motivating to them to continue to do well. And so when Carney reports back to us, it's both because he's committed to transparency, but it's also because he knows that he's making progress. And there's no bandwagon there's nothing that succeeds more than success. So every time he reports back to us that he got an A+ on something, this meeting with the premiers or this visit to Washington, it makes people believe and support and get more engaged and put more effort behind him. him. Success breeds success, and Carney knows how to both be successful and to be sharing that success so that other people can continue to build on his success. Meanwhile, pathetic Poilievre is out there walking around farmland in Alberta trying to tell us that he's this real, messianic leader who's only, he's only in the wilderness for a little while, then he'll be back, In the meantime, while he's doing his time in the wilderness before he makes his big comeback, Carney is going to blanket Canada with success and progress and tangibles that might not be everything he said because he's in a minority position, as you mentioned, and the world's a rough place. But he's going to report back to us on every bit of progress, and that is going to make whatever the returning from the wilderness Poilievre tries to introduce to Canada seem weak. And I'm looking forward to that because, as Carney said to Trump, we're stronger together with the U.S. He ran on Canada's strong, and Poilievre looks pathetic and weak.
Yep. I mean, he's basically trying to convince Canada, I'm strong enough to stand up to Trump, but give me a participation trophy for having won more seats last time and give me a do-over.
Yeah,
and the safest seat in the country. Nothing about that screams strong.
Right.
It just doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Just doesn't. The brand is shattered.
Yeah, and so it'll turn into a grievance brand. It was all taken from me, and therefore it was taken from you, and therefore you must fight with me. I mean, we've seen that playbook in the U.S. It worked for Trump, so let's not let it work here in Canada.
No.
True North.
Let's make sure he goes down as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, absolutely. Like warning alarms everywhere, Canada. Like we've seen what happened in the U.S. We are suffering from it, and we are going to continue to suffer as long as Trump and the MAGA regime are in power down there. So we better not just take this as, Poilievre tried and failed. Now he's out there and let's mock him. No, they have a comeback plan, and it's gross, and we all have to see it and stand up against it and support our Prime Minister as he tries to protect and grow our country for a new future. I'm feeling optimistic. And you know what, Douglas? I came in here really pissed off at Doug Ford and Danielle Smith for all their bullshit and all this MAGA garbage, trying to mess with our democracy and our freedoms, and just their little fight between each other, all smoke to cover their own scandals. I was in a bad mood. But then I talked to you, and not only do you have systems fixes in place, but also wonderful to hear other intelligent Canadians' perspective on what's going on. We are not alone. We are all seeing much of the same things. The key to me is, success is 1% seeing it and 99% doing it. We have to do something. Get out there with your feet and your signs, Alberta, this weekend across Canada. Show solidarity for those who are protecting our democracy and trying to keep our country together and sovereign from the MAGA threat. Thanks so much, Douglas Connors from the True North Eager Beaver podcast. And we'll see you. Scandal Panel will be on next Thursday, everybody. It's going to be a good show. Thank you.
When you care about current affairs, it's on the old show. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the old show. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the show. It's the old show. Lord Babcock's the old show. And with a lot of great guests, she puts them to the test on the old show. Yeah, there's no doubt they'll be calling them out on the old show. You gotta stand for something or fall for it all. Canada, you hear the call of the old show. It's a podcast, the old show. Lord Babcock's the old show. Stay informed with the old show, old show.
Your merch bin.